The supernatural exists, and what you believe can connect you to peace and happiness or fear and torment. The entities that visit us in our dreams may seem benevolent, but have a sinister agenda. Our show today on Night Terrors is coming up next on Darkness to Light.
Have you had any experience with night terrors or demonic spirits in dreams?
Night terrors, I think probably this isn't technically a night terror, although it has elements of it, but I do have a reoccurring, it's really more of a hypnagogic hallucination. If you're familiar with that, as we move in and out of sleep, towards the very beginning of our sleep cycles, we go into hypnagogic activity. Usually we're pretty not conscious when it's happening, but some people have imagery and hallucinations they'll see as they fall asleep. That's hypnagogic hallucinations. And then hypnopompic is when you're waking up, you might have hallucinations. So whenever I have a lot of stress going on in my life, I will have a reoccurring issue where I will suddenly be jolting out of bed, completely sure there was just a spider coming down at me, and I'll literally, I don't care how many times it's happened, I'll jump out of bed. I'm trying to deal with it. My husband's gotten pretty used to it at this point. It's not all the time, but in times of stress, I definitely have these episodes that last seconds, but they're absolutely real to me. Again, it doesn't matter how many times it's happened, it's real, and it's very momentary, and I can go right back to sleep. So it's very similar to what they say would be a night terror, but it's something I can remember the hallucination, and so that becomes more of a hypnagogic hallucination, they would say. But
okay,
then
is that a lucid dream that you have?
No, I do have lucid dreams. I used to train myself to do it. But this is an episode where I literally think there is a spider in the bed, or a spider. It's usually coming down the ceiling right at me, to the point where I will flail, I will scream, I will jump up many times. It's very real to me. It's a momentary hallucination, really. And it's during that time right before I'm slipping off to sleep. And then, of course, I with my stress too, sometimes comes on sleep paralysis. I certainly have suffered with sleep paralysis, where you wake up and you cannot move for a period of time. For me, it lasts, maybe 10 seconds, but it's terrifying when it happens. And that's pretty common for people to experience.
Oh, that's why.
Absolutely.
So those are my experiences personally with having similar to a night terror, where it's I understand most of the time night terrors happen with children and they don't remember anything, and it usually comes from the deeper sleep phase. They're usually in stage 3 sleep, which means you're not normally in dream. You're not in heavy dream phase. You're more in a deep sleep, which is why a lot of times the kids they don't remember anything, and it takes a while sometimes to even make them conscious, because they're very, very into deep sleep at the moment they're usually having them. But I've not seen a child having sleep that kind of night terrors. I'm sure it's common with kids.
Yes. Okay. And Kenneth, your turn.
I had apparitions, and I'm very confused. Exactly. I awakened with a child in the bed, and the child was wearing a pink nightgown, and I was trying to figure out if the child was real. And so, of course, I picked her up. She had weight to her. So I woke my wife up, who was next to me, and the child was talking about how she had died. And her brother was in the other side of the room, but I'd find that out as she got talking. So I want my wife to have some level of what was going on. So I woke her up. She sat up and held the child, then handed the child back to me. And then the child talked to her brother across the room. The brother didn't seem to be aware that they were dead. And so that was, I would have several different scenarios of that. So I was, of course, quite surprised and shocked. And of course, my wife the following morning didn't remember holding the child, which there's a lot of occurrences. We've been using cameras that occur in the rooms, but my wife manages to be unconscious through, or sleeping solidly through most of them.
Okay, so has your camera picked these things up?
My camera has picked up, well, the photography work I've been doing a lot of radio on and work with is photographing abductions, which has people turning into plasma and then dissipating. And I think I sent you a picture of a person in a plasma form. And we're dealing with high electromagnetic frequencies.
Okay, so Nathaniel, what would you say is occurring with Kenneth?
In terms of his experiences or his research?
His experiences.
For some reason, there's a life form that likes to appear as a deceased entity, a person, to gain trust, to gain consent. I would say, how long ago did this happen?
What?
How long ago did this these manifestations happen in terms of when you had a child in the bed?
Well, the child one was a spiritual. That happened about 3 years ago. And the child, she was laughing at the way her brother died. It was a very short, maybe 10, 12 minutes. And then I fell back into sleep.
Well,
There was another similar episode connected with the stuffed animals of my son that was very similar in experience.
did the stuffed animal move at all?
No, what happened was my son has high functioning autism.
Okay.
And I've been trying to get him to go on a dating service or get involved with meeting women.
Mm-hmm.
One night I awakened to see his friends. So they called themselves his friends. This young woman introduced herself to me. She was about 7 or 8. There was 3 or 4 other children. And the woman, the little child or woman, she seemed the dominant one. She explained that they were Jason's friends and that Jason had friends.
Very interesting.
And I, again, tried to pick her up. She had weight to her. I was trying to find a way to get a sense of reality of what was occurring or happening at the time.
Okay. Well, I want to answer the question because I think that in my research, I am a religious demonologist. And so I think that one of the things that I've been trying to define is what is an external soul, what an external soul is. It's physical, very physical. So to answer your question, I would say that they're looking for some form of consent. Evidently, they know your work. Evidently, they know what your interest is. That in terms of an entity, a child, a physical child in the bed, and they don't know they're deceased. There's 2 possibilities. I'm answering his question. I don't believe that these are extraterrestrial. I think that this was. See, I'd have to know more about it. This is a very ambiguous answer, but I'm going to say this. It's looking for something.
I agree with you that they're not terrestrial. The terrestrial experiences are very different. And with the terrestrial experiences, they take you away. They don't come.
Right.
And so it was explained to me by a professor I was working with on my first book that upon the death of an entity or person, that they can take and hold or take a physical form for a period of time after their death. We so this is what I am assuming is that these two children had died fairly recently to the period of their formation. How they ended up in my room, why they ended up in my room, I don't have an explanation for. My son seemed to feel that this house had a gateway in it. And he was talking about how it seemed, and my son has some psychic abilities, how it seemed like they're traveling through here.
Do you remember at all what they were wearing?
What?
Do you remember at all what they were wearing at the time?
The child had a pink nightgown on that went down to her legs, or down to her ankles. And she seemed to have, she was laughing at how the boy had died, shitting in his pants. She thought that was somewhat funny. She seemed to have a little bit more of a perspective in her conversation than a child of her age. She seemed to understand. She understood that she was dead. And she was trying to explain to her brother that he and her father was dead. The pieces I put together was that the father killed the two children and then killed himself. That was kind of the only scenario I can put there with the child in the bed.
Yeah. So to answer your question more specifically, whenever I encounter entities like that, I always consider them as memory in motion. And so that's why I'm asking, okay, what did they look like? What were what's their phraseology? What language did they talk in? Did they have an accent? What were they manifesting?
She had very, very clear English.
Mm-hmm.
Seemed American.
That's interesting. I don't even know I don't know where to go with this. I mean, I can go many directions, but you're in charge of this, Bub. So I'm just, I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah. Kelly Joe.
I'm a medium. I see stuff. I know stuff. The kids are dead. They were killed by their father. He's a medium. And he does have a portal in his house. Both him and his son have abilities. So people are going to come through. And they need to seal their vortex because they got the highway going on.
Yeah, that's what my son was describing.
Well, yeah, they're all coming in and going out.
Yeah, they were talking, from what he said, they were going through this place as if they were going somewhere else.
There's stuff you can do to seal it, around your property. Do you own your home?
Yeah, I had it built.
Well, ask that be sealed, and ask that only the highest light be around you, and take 4 points of crystal points, just single points, and put them each in each corner of your perimeter of your land.
Okay.
And then ask that the vortex be sealed.
Okay. These spirits haven't been harmful.
No, but you're a medium, so they're going to come to the light.
Yeah, that's what it seems.
And you can tell them, you can set up a doorway and say, look, your people are waiting for you on the other side. Go through that doorway. And then they don't need to bother you.
Okay. This is unusual, of course, for me. I don't have events like this. I've never had events like this.
Well, you do now. So, but you're going to be okay.
Yeah, I'm not. It was more the unusualness of it, the challenging of perspective of reality.
Well, your wife was like in a trance. She was still sleeping.
What?
Why she didn't remember.
My wife, who has recently deceased, had.
Sorry for your loss.
Yeah,
sorry.
She had denial to a lot what the cameras were picking up were very frightening for her. So following an abduction that she had, she was very confused and disoriented. So she seemed to manage to avoid the scope of certain realities or going around her. So I think I questioned her mind being able to accept what happened that night, and therefore her not having memory. And I found that common in a lot of my work, especially my UFO celestial contact work. So I believe the girl was solid form, had formed. And the same with the male child. And they were coming through and they dispersed.
Right, they aren't there anymore. They just
No, that was a 10-minute episode one night.
Is your wife a multiple abductee?
My wife is not really an abductee. I had the Greys take her when she had cancer. And they had done this a couple times on my request, telepathic requests. When she returned from that experience, she was lost, confused, had an earring missing, didn't know what was happened, and the earring was on her bedside table the following morning. So I think they were trying to tell her, but I don't think her level of acceptance. And in dealing with abductions, the psychological plays a big aspect on what is remembered, what isn't remembered, the dissociative processes. So my son is an abductee. I'm, of course, an abductee. But per se, my wife really, isn't a regular abductee. She was taken at a couple times.
Okay.
Okay, let's hear from Tommy.
Right. My take's definitely a little bit different than everybody because I was doing ghost busting, spirit release when I was 16. Souls, when they leave the body, some of them have a place to go and some of them don't. The ones that stay here are called ghosts and spirits. Some of them you can guide and lead them away. I worked in the Juma Mansion in New York City, which is probably one of the most haunted houses in the United States. And the spirits that I freed was many, including Aaron Burr. But Madame Jumel, who actually the Juma Mansion's named after, she said she won't leave until they tear the house down. So they have their agendas, but it's limited to their awareness. Now, when I worked with Aaron Burr, it was easy to cross him over. I don't work with him after I cross him over. I bring him to where I want to bring him, and then I let him work with the angels or deity guides that they meet there. But I was in Florida, and we had the worst storm at a UFO conference. That night, 40 people were killed in a lightning storm. I woke up in the middle of the night crying. I went down the elevator, went down to the beach, and all the souls were lined up there. So I crossed them all over. But I didn't even know what I was doing. I didn't have training, and I never had training in anything I ever did. But I just rely on spirit. But I am aware of all my lifetimes back to Atlantis. In Atlantis, we had 32 psychic abilities, which we do not have now. But in the interim, when I was starting to do past life regression, working with time, most people have missing time and their abductions. They don't know what that abduction was. The second thing is Truman actually worked out a deal with almost every gray and reptilian race that comes here, that they have to brainwash and program the people that they abduct. They weren't allowed to remember anything that happened if they did come back. But after that happened, a lot of the people started getting bits of memory and doing past life regressions, easier to break that open, for me anyway, to get through that veil and see what really happened on the ship and things like that. I have a woman on my show right now, I do every week. She's been abducted half of her life. She has whole giant pods of families up there. She's the only one that can communicate them. The Greys don't know how or why she can do it. But I will say this, Greys are not good. They have never been good. No matter what they do for a person, it's only temporary. And when they work with people, realize when Phil Snyder, when they broke into that base, they had to kill all those Greys that were there, but they already slaughtered and ate 160,000 people. So they're not the friendliest people on the planet. When I was younger, around 20, I was working with women that lost their children at 8.5 months pregnant. We had the sonograms and everything proving it was, and she was taken to see her child like 1.5 years later, and they told her she'll never see him again. But as far as the abduction thing, I've been working with that, and there's a fine line between abduction and programming. The government does it as well. Now, if you go on about missing persons, when people say they were abducted and had a good experience, I challenge that, because they're not here to make us better people. If they were, they've been here thousands of years, and we're not any better than we were 30,000 years ago. So when people say, well, they're all good and bad. No, the races that come here come in a ship or whatever. The interdimensional beings are uncommon, and they're not here to work like angels and stuff. But the ones that travel here, all right, they come here with an agenda. Every race has an agenda. The reptilian race, the mantis race, the Nordics, all of them have different agendas. It's not like they're all here for the same thing. But I'll tell you this, the one main thing that they're all here is for food and DNA. I should say blood. After that, it goes into energy. Now, Barbara Messiniak wrote a book years ago explaining how souls can get absorbed in the astral plane when they're crossing over. An unaware soul going into the astral plane is easy to attack or latch onto, especially when there's no protection around that child or even an adult when you're crossing over. I work with that as well because, people say, well, we're protected. Do you know what protection is? Do you know how to protect yourself from an alien? I mean, I was 10 feet away from an alien. I was a foot away from a Bigfoot in real life with people. So when people talk about these things, I have worked with so many abductees, and what I realized, 90% have a blocked experience. So they don't know what happened. Even Travis Walton, he doesn't know what really happened on that ship. And he keeps exaggerating. And
I have a very different perspective in abductions, a much more positive perspective. And the research I'm working with now, I don't have the negativity that you're coming from. Those that I'm interviewing and speaking with are from a much more positive, enlightened experience.
Can I ask you one simple question? One simple question?
Sure.
What solid object did they ever give you?
What?
What solid object did they ever give you?
They've never given me a solid object.
They never gave anybody anything on this planet except one person. You know who that one person was? John Lennon. He was given
I got a bracelet that was given to me after a procedure was done with me in an abduction with military personnel. I don't know. I have the bracelet. I posted it on Facebook. It's neither plastic or rock. Nobody can seem to figure out what it is. But whether a gift is given or not given, to me, doesn't speak of validity on positive or negative.
Well, positive to me means doing something that's beneficial to the world. All right.
Beneficial to the individual involved.
If they've been here for a long period of time, they could have done something important for the human race, which they didn't do. We are the worst of sexual abuse, thievery, robberies, cursing, murder, all those kind of crimes.
The homicides around my abductions were done by men. The friends that were killed in my abductions or around as witnesses were killed by men. Not the aliens, they were killed by men.
Aliens don't kill people. I'm not saying they do. They eat people.
Well, I say the problem has been with man. It's the men, the military, that killed my friends because of their knowledge. So with what I'm seeing, the problem isn't with the celestials. It's with all the secrets and games of man.
Well,
and
you know
the celestials have to give are very individual gifts. To those individuals, they have personal contacts with.
All right.
And
let me just say two things. I want to say this. To me, the only important thing you could be given is the awareness of God. Second to that, the most important UFO series of truth that happened on this planet happened in New York City and New Jersey. It was when wait, let me just say this. You don't know much about it. It's the most important.
I don't know about that incident, but I know about 100 others.
No, you don't know the story.
my involvement with Department of
I
Defense
don't care who you have the involvement with. Do you know anything about the Philadelphia experiment?
and our perceptions on God being outside of us differ
Well, I'm
versus
let's
God
stick with the
being
UFO
in
thing.
us.
Very few people understand God or want to. Very few people.
God is within all of us.
What was that? They can believe what
God
they
is within
If God
all
is
of
in
us.
you, why are we the way we are? If we're people of God, we're
We are
in
the way we are because
for people.
we've created this.
Well, then we're not God, are we? We're a sick God.
Those
We're a
that have
perverted
done
God.
the creation definitely are not God. No.
Well,
Those
and
that
saying it's
control,
within you.
those that hold the wealth are not God either.
Well, Jesus said that 1,000 times. I mean, he said,
Again, I'm Buddhist. I'm not of a Christian faith.
right,
But
okay, so you don't believe in God. So
I believe God is us and we are God.
that's Buddhism. My partner's a Buddhist. So yeah, I have a hard time with that because I had 5 death experiences. I stood before the angels. I stood before deities. You know what a deity? No, very few people understand what a deity really is, or even met with one personally.
I don't know that if I did, I'd trust it.
What was that?
Yeah, that's kind of my point. I think
Well, Shiva,
a
Durga,
lot of
Kali, all those deities.
off of celestials enslavement.
Well, here's something that I learned, becoming aware of all my past lives and traveling the higher realms. Each realm has a god, and the astral plane has Satnam, Jehovah, and including Lucifer. They're all the judges that keep they keep the souls from going further. When you get, but if you don't experience out of your body, that's the first thing you have to learn how to do. If you
I've
can't
had
experience
out of body 100
where'd
times.
you go? How'd you get there? What
I
do you
went
use?
many places.
What do you wear? What do you need when you're there? Nothing.
I don't think that this data sample needs to rely on personal experience. I think that is the banishment of,
Yes.
of everything. Because if I've learned anything in my work, personal experience is limited to belief system. And Dr. Carla Turner's work we have, abductees who believe in Jesus, who were abducted, and they call upon him, and instantaneously he shows up.
Well, that's delusional.
So, why? It's her personal experience.
A personal
Yeah.
experience has to be proven real, at least to a person.
Who determines that?
Yeah.
Other people. If I bring Jesus down in front of 1 billion people, obviously Jesus is there. If I bring it down in my room,
No, it's not.
it's different, isn't it?
I'll tell you what, dude. So Dr. Carla Turner had an abductee, Ted Rice, who had guides. And this is why I studied pathology, not personal experience. I've had personal experiences and I've been deceived. So Dr. Carla Turner had Ted Rice. Ted Rice gets up there and he's with his grandmother, who's like 8 or 9 years old. His grandmother is being groomed physically and emotionally for sexual intercourse. She says, I've only been with one man. He's deceased, been dead for 11 years. Instantaneously, he too manifests. Is that him? Or is that her interpretation of him?
Yes.
Because if it is, then now we're in necromancy and necrophilia. So the data sample has to be interpreted outside the dimensionality of personal experience. That's what they're relying on. That's not how they're communicating.
That's because, very few people have an understanding of Lucifer or Satan or demons and those kind of words. You say you're into demonism?
No. I'm in demonology. I study the pathology and psychopathology of entities.
Did you ever
Demonic
try to
entities.
meet Satan?
Do what?
Did you ever try to meet Satan?
No. Why would I do that? No.
No,
I have no interest.
To say knowledge that science does is mostly unprovable. Science itself cannot prove anything beyond the moon or the sun. They can't prove anything about the whole solar system. So, and a lot of scientists admit that everything's just a theory. When people come up with a theory, it's still not provable.
Okay.
All right. In a world, when people die, which people are going to do sooner or later, and before they reach 125 years old, no matter what kind of healing they're going to get, they're still going to die before they're 125.
Right.
That's not broken yet, and it hasn't been broken in 100 years.
Okay.
Now, on top of that, when people say they don't believe in Jesus, I mean, why do 2.4 billion people believe in Jesus? For a reason. There's some connection to something that's real to them.
I'm not saying it's not. What I'm saying is they're looking into us and they're morphing themselves into whatever we want to believe they are. That's why personal experience cannot be relied on. We have to look at the sum total. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? So
Any
it
deity can
doesn't
change
matter
form
what
to
I've
what you want it to be.
experienced if you
That's
haven't experienced it as well. You know what I mean?
any deity can change form to be whatever you want them to be. That's for sure. That's how they
I
come to
can't.
me.
I can't.
Well, not you, but most people, if they want to see Jesus, this being that comes to them, they're going to accept. Now, the Nordics appear to most people, and they think they're angels of God
Right.
because they're white, they're 8 foot tall, they got blue eyes, and most people assume that they're good beings. They travel on ships with reptilians. So, you know, when people don't understand certain things about aliens and races, when they have a vision or experience, especially a dream, all the new word that the UFO world created is experiences. All that means is they had an experience in their room. Doesn't mean the experience is real or not. To them, it's real.
I think I got confirmation on some of my night visits with phone calls from the locations I had traveled to in the plasma teleportation process. Those calls verified the visits I made in other states. So my abductions haven't just been to ships, time, they've also been to states and cities in this country.
Do you remember those visits or not?
Yes, I remember a portion of those visits. The call that I received from Chicago, I got flashbacks of the daughter that went to Russia. The son was trying to convince me that I had visited him. It took a while, and the memories came. I thought it was a dream when I had visited that family. Another woman claimed a man looking like me, but not me, had visited her, and that was in Beverly, Mass. And that was, again, that was a day experience because I was working third shifts. So a lot of our teleportations in the group I'm working with, we could be teleported to the Middle East, we could be teleported somewhere in the United States, or we could be teleported to a ship.
You'd be
Nathan,
teleported.
have you? Sorry. Go ahead, Tommy.
See, when people use the word teleportation and remote viewing, they're two things that soul does at a different level than the physical reality. Now, if you
The physical disappearance of people in their rooms under camera, the changing to plasma and plasma back to a form, shows that these people.
understand technology of aliens, I can shoot a ship on
I'm
the
not. This isn't just technology of aliens.
They could stop the camera. They could put whatever they want in there. Do you know the name Corey?
You can
Corey
justify anything and everything with counterpoints.
because you know
the work I'm working with is quite accurate. We're now incorporating electrical equipment to measure the frequencies that we're getting and the intensity of the electricity.
Well, the ghost shows that are on TV, they all got machines to hear the ghosts talking, to measure them, to see where they are, to see the size of them.
You can use that to doubt everything and anything.
I'm not saying spirits aren't real, they are.
They are real for many people, not
But
just
they're
me.
not helping people understand what soul is really here for in the first place. I mean, there's people like Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle, all these people coming out and teaching people how to be in the now, be in the moment, and all those kind of things. But they're not teaching them anything real because they're going to die. They're going to leave this body. Whether they're going to reincarnate or not is based on their karma. Nobody talks about that in any great length except Buddhism. But
Well, in most of the perceptions of abductees, most of them will tell you their former lives. There's many of the abductees I've interviewed know their former lives. I know many of my former lives. So I don't have doubts of past lives and reincarnation. I think we pass through.
Don't you think it could help the human race right now? If you could take something like Y and go to a specific spot where a war was started or something like 9/11. I had 3 people prophesize 9/11 was going to happen the year before it did in exact detail. Not one of them there went to the 9/11 to the building when it was going to happen. Why? And I said, you know, things that are happening, these people prophesize it. If you don't act on a prophecy, what useful is the prophecy?
Well, the unfortunate thing I found in my time travel, in going ahead 3 months, is that everything is predetermined. All of the things that took place to make the occurrences of what I visited, all the intricacies. So I have to say I believe in predetermination. I don't believe we're making the decisions necessarily now.
Well, see, so everything's predetermined.
That's pretty much my time
It
travel
makes no sense to do anything. Why live? Why be a part of anything if it's all predetermined? If
So
there's
what?
no step
because
forward,
there's something in that predetermination.
Right.
let me tell you something you might not know. When the Philadelphia experiment happened and they went back in time, they killed somebody. During that time frame, it changed the history of the world. The government is still trying to rearrange that.
Yeah,
Because
and the people we
that
were
were-
involved with were doing time travel to the
Okay,
past.
yeah, now we are. That's right. But here's another thing. You know anything about the
That's
Pleiadians?
to the past.
You know anything about the Pleiadians? Anything?
I want to hear from Nathaniel real quick.
They are.
Hang on, Tommy.
Man,
Nathaniel.
I do not care what I believe. This isn't about what we, honestly, I don't care what I believe. That doesn't help anybody. They don't care what I believe. Doesn't help them. The point is, what's the data sample? What's the data sample? They will see, if I rely so much on what I believe, all they have to do is look at my eyes and manifest whatever it is that I can have, whoever they'll be, to get consent. So I don't care what my dad's a pastor. I don't care. That's irrelevant to me and to them until I give it to them and say, listen, it matters to me the most. What's the data sample say? The data sample says that they can manipulate at least time. And that's in both the paranormal field
You're going to die
and
before
abduction.
125 years old.
Okay.
At that point, when you're on your dying bed, what are you going to be thinking about? Your technology that you played with, or where you're going to go really? How about
I don't know, but I'm not here to talk about what I'm going to be doing on my dying bed here. I'm here because there's things happening that are real life. Real people are going through real stuff. And I'm not, and so I'm here because I think the data sample speaks to something larger than the mini microcosm of my religious dogmas. Doesn't matter what I believe, never has. What does the data sample say? What are they manifesting as? I got questions. The gentleman said that the entity was physical. Why is it? Why are they manifesting as physical? Why is it that it wasn't physical until it was held? Why did it want to be held? Why did it draw attention to the other side of the room? Is it pop, right? So I don't look inside of me for the answers.
Does he have that video? Does he have that video of him being solid? That would be worth $1 billion right now if he had that video.
Everything you've been talking about would be worth $1 million if you had.
I have a video of myself becoming plasma.
Right.
Right. You know, my mother worked for the Dispatch in 1969. She did a story on plasma. Plasma can take any form. And that was done many, many years ago. So obviously the government knows how to use it much greater than that in 2020.
And that's what our teleportations are about.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
That's how we are physically transferred.
Okay, so
in
is that
physical form?
Okay, so okay, because as a researcher, I mean, here's what I can tell you guys from data sample, at least in my work. These entities can manifest as the deceased, and they have all throughout biblical antiquity, all throughout the Levant. That's why in my research, I'm trying to figure out, are these actually disincarnate souls? Because they're obviously operating on memory, at least many of them. Now, talk about plasma, I've seen entities do it. They don't have to be in ETs, right? So my question is, what is their speech preference? What's their language preference? How much about you do they know? Are they manifesting to you in a way that you're familiar with? Do they have an accent? Do they have a smell? Why is it that they can walk in, hypnotize you, take something from you, you don't find it till later? Why is it that in haunting, see, these are the questions we're asking. I'm saying I don't have the answers. And I'm saying none of my human experiences will give that much insight into everything. Does it make sense?
There's a lot of answers to that. And I'm sure even the medium that's on here, she could tell you certain spirits have a certain smell. Higher angels have a different kind of smell. All right, that's one thing. And now when they come into your room and stuff, what do they want to teach you? What do they want to give you? What are they there for? You think aliens come through space?
The classes that we're taken to explains why they're taking us. Most of us do not have memory of the substance of the classes.
Correct. And so let's
Ellie Joe, do you have anything to add?
About the alien stuff?
Go ahead.
They're just, well, they're separate entities. Aliens are aliens and spirits, and souls are souls. But yes, they can appear. I agree with the guy with the hat, with
Nate, you can call
Nathaniel.
me
Nathaniel. And I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm not trying to be rude. And they can appear as a loved one to get to you. They trick you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Consent. Now let's look at the pathology here, guys. Incubus are what? Entities that go into human form, specifically male. What are they after? Eggs. That's the pathology. And a succubus, what is she after? Semen. Let's take that, transplace it. Okay, let's transpose it rather into the UFO abduction phenomenon. I don't care what they look like. I don't care. What are they after? They're using the same modus operandi. That's why Dr. Carla Turner's abductee, his grandmother, they were not getting consent. Now, what's fascinating to me is they had her right where they wanted her, right? They took her from a location, then they manifest and say, okay, listen, we want intercourse. She didn't have intercourse with the hybrid. And so what happened was she gave them a sign. This is how damning why a personal experience is so damning, as it can be. So she says, I've only been with one man. They say, who? Oh, my husband. Next thing you know, boom. Now, if you would have taken that husband, that apparition, outside of UFO abduction context and placed it into a home at nighttime, that's an incubus that's been happening for 3,000 years.
Right.
So the pathology here, I don't care if they have horns and hooves, big eyes, long necks. What are they after?
Right.
Because if it's a
The hybrid programs, they're after the semen. I agree with you.
Yes, sir. Now let's talk about the hybrid program. The hybrid program doesn't make any sense because if they've been doing it for as long, even far beyond what David Jacobs says, we're at least talking 200 or 300 years. At what point will they be satisfied with a hybridized program?
With the Greys, their genetic structure has deteriorated. They need the influx of fresh DNA.
Well, they already created another world that's completely populated already of their race. And one of the people I do the show with is one of the people, they took her eggs and everything else. But let me just say this, you know, when you deal with the physical world, this whole energy, everything about it is still the lowest level of vibration in God's worlds. When you talk about the astral plane and you walk around and live on the astral plane, it's so different. When you get the ability to go past the astral plane into the mental plane, you suddenly become much more God-realized and self-realized. Meaning, wait, your energy changes. If you ever saw a person of light, you would know that. You probably never saw a pure energy, a person walking in pure light down here. If they are, there would be a reason why they are. Because they change everything where they walk. That's why God grants them a higher place to stay. This is hell. Whether people think they're in heaven or not, look at the world. Look at what it's doing.
Okay.
Do we do anything spiritual as a consciousness, a group of people?
All right.
This idea of a single God is a big issue for me because it forces man, and as the Wingmakers said, it forces man to look outside of himself for what is inside of him. This portion of an outside God was how many ETs enslaved man in the past. God is within us.
Right.
Okay.
But see, go through history. Nobody ever talked about God, a real God. It was deities, animals. The first thing ever to be worshipped was an animal. Then it went to half-breeds, half animal and half human. Then it went to deities. Then the aliens came in. So anyway, I'm telling you, if you went back in time, you would know that. And then who did they worship? The Mayans and the Egyptians were given false truth. Everything in the pyramids that's carved about reincarnation is wrong. I mean, look what they did to the bodies. Look what they thought they were going to do when they came back. Look at all the things they did. Nothing was even close to the truth. Aliens are not going to give you the truth. They work for Satan. All right, Satan wants to keep souls in this realm, the physical and the astral plane. They don't want them to go into the higher worlds of God because then they have nobody to play with. Everything we're talking about right now is a game to them. Food, sex, it's just a
That's
game.
not my interpretation.
What is it then? What is sex down here? Important?
Man is making the mess down here. The fact that man is being left alone to sit and struggle in his own shit, that's
Grays
an issue in itself.
can't have sex with humans. Reptilians can, just so you know.
Reptilians have played certainly a dangerous influence.
Hang on, Kenneth. Let's hear from Leah for a second. Leah, I wanted to ask you, in your work, have you run into any situation like this where a person has had an abduction, or maybe they have teleported or experienced anything like what you've heard today?
No, this has been very fascinating for me. I even had to look up grays because I didn't even understand what you guys were talking about. Now I do. They're the typical extraterrestrials I would think of, I suppose. I have certainly in my work dealt with a lot of things where people have, maybe they feel a presence on them when they're dealing with having sleep paralysis, or maybe they've had out-of-body experience phenomenon or lucid dream phenomenon. But really, this has just been a very interesting topic to listen in on. I don't have expertise to layer in, that's for sure. I did have one experience as a child where I believe I saw what was a UFO, and that was pretty much the closest I've come to any personal experience in this.
Well, what was I
Okay.
gonna say? Keep yourself pure as you are. Don't get pulled into it.
Nathan, I wanted to ask you a quick question. These grays that we've been talking about today, are they benevolent or are they evil?
They're replicas. They're second selves. If you go back into ufology, because I'm a historian, so I have to look at things both academically and just kind of get the whole gamut of this. UFOs that we see carved in steles and in sarcophagi, they were flying souls, bird souls, Baal. They had wings and they were balls of light, orbs. So what happened was, and going back into the what it's called a Katamua inscription of the late Iron Age, they saw possession. This is why I'm into demonic possession as well. They saw possession first as afterlife phenomenon. So they would say, like Katamua said in his Aramaic inscription, I created a body that looked like me so that after I'm deceased, I can step into it. Now, why do I say that? It's because possession has evolved. It first began with grave sites, gravestones, idols, literally just necromancy, to actually creating what are called second selves. Now, one of the ways they began to do it and how they evolved is in the Apocryphon of John. It's a Coptic manuscript preserved by Egyptian monks. It's about Genesis 6. These are the same entities. They're doing the same thing. They're just doing it in a different form. They took wives. It wasn't their own wives. It was someone else's. Check. Hello, Dr. Carla Turner. Right? It fits. It's ridiculous how much it fits. And then they appeared to the wives as their husbands during intercourse. At the moment of conception, they then changed their apparition, boom, to their original form. And then they stare directly into the face of the women. That's an old, what's called an obstetric tradition. It's gynecological. It's about pregnancy. What they believed at that time, and it seems that these abductees have been experiencing this, is that whatever the woman is staring at, the face, whatever she's staring at the moment of conception, she will birth the material image of. So these entities who were disincarnate wanted a replica of life. So the Apocryphon of John said that they created copies of bodies. In other words, we would call them grays because they all look alike. They have the same dimensionality. They look like clones. Why did they do that? Because they're soul hunters. They're necromancers.
So that hasn't been the experiences I've heard.
Yet.
And I'm continuing to interview gray abductees. And in the last 30 years, the pattern of how the grays do the hybrid programs has dramatically changed. But I'm not getting copies. I'm getting grays with personalities. I'm getting interactive. I'm not getting
copies of
robotic.
What about copies of abductees?
That's a question I don't have an answer to.
Okay, Dr. Carla Turner has multiplicity of cases where the abductee, when we would not give consent, they would point out a second self and they would say, if you do not give us consent and work with us, we will snatch your soul out of your body, kill you, replace your original body with what we've got, and your family would never know the difference. They were called soul receptacles.
Yeah, and that's a different category of experience than I've been involved in or interviewed in. I've been dealing with the straight grays, the hybrid program, how the women participate. That has dramatically changed. There's an incredible union with the last women I've spoken to that had recent abductions in 2015 in the hybrid program. There's incredible compassion between them and the grays, trust and them and these grays. So I do not go with the robotic grays. I think that's part of the propaganda.
Well, it's their propaganda, not ours. If you go back to the medieval period, the demonic entities have the same pathology and victimology as these guys do. It wasn't until the 12th century that they stopped looking for women and looking for consent, and then they actually had witches who would actually give them whatever they wanted. So if anything, what we're dealing with are entities who are, okay, let's talk about this. And I'm not trying to pig trail. When we're talking about the blending program, the merging of energy and matter, Professor Janice Bodie at University of British Columbia said this. It's fascinating. Possession is the merging of energy and matter. We would call that a hybridization program. So what's the hybridization going on? What is that about? Well, in the Apocryphon of John, it says that there was a mixture. And this is why I believe I'm one of those universal field theorists, where I believe we're not dealing with separate entities. We're dealing with the same victimology here, the same pathology. They're doing the same things, but they are evolving. But okay, let me get back to this. What was the hybridization? It wasn't I'm making a new species of alien. It was, quote, this is literally what it says. It says, and from the darkness they begot children whose likeness was the image of that apparition that had manipulated the women into intercourse. So what's the purpose of this? It goes back into an ancient mess. This is just my field, whatever. I'll stop it for this. It goes back to an ancient Mesopotamian belief of the afterlife, where I could actually leave my body, create and possess someone else, and by doing that, I stay alive. Now is that why we can have 25 different grays and only have one consciousness possessing them all?
Let me ask you a quick question, Nathan. Is there any connection between that and with cloning that we hear about today?
I think it is in a sense, because the idea is, does a clone person have a soul? Does an alien have a soul, right? Because when you get to dealing with these grays, a lot of them are not, it's not that they're robotic, they're just dumb. It's almost as if someone is communicating.
Have you spoken with a gray?
No.
Have you stood or sat in a chair with their instrumentation or been on their operating tables?
Correct. They can have instrumentation and be thought for. They can do everything they're doing and be thought for. Just like a person can be possessed and be thought for. Does it make sense? It's a theory.
Yeah, and I'm going with my theories by what those I interview are saying.
Of course, that's fine. That's a good point.
And the marks they come back with, we've photographed from these surgical procedures. A lot of them have been corrective surgical procedures.
Right.
Cancer has been removed. A lot of corrective surgery has been done to a lot of abductees.
Cancer was cured many years ago by the native people. They can cure any cancer. They were always able to do that. It's not like it's a miracle cure, and they're not saving somebody.
And I guess I need to see the stats on the natives curing cancer. Cancer is new.
Just type cancer answer. All right, you'll see it online. How to make it.
But anyways, the abductees have told me on the surgical procedures that took care of their problems. The medical procedures that are being done are far superior to medicine here.
What do you think they care about our bodies? Do you think they really need to save our bodies for any reason?
They have stopped suffering for these people. Get back
to what he said. Tibetan Buddhism, the high people, what they do, if they want to stay in this world, they can take another body. And there's a technique.
They will to stay alive.
That's another phenomenon.
Very similar to what you said. It's taking their body and letting their soul leave when they take over the body.
Again, that's another phenomena.
Right?
That's not the phenomena we're dealing with.
Okay.
There's many things going on out there.
There is, but I've had many cases, especially in hauntings, where these entities would actually heal someone in order to communicate a message. See, the miracle is not the meaning. The miracle is not the
Nobody's
message.
calling medical procedures miracles. We're just saying that the Greys have been assisting people with their suffering, have been assisting. We're not calling it a miracle. We're just saying they are helping people, period. That's all we're saying that.
So they're taking people without their permission, outside of time,
No.
victimizing them, and then helping them.
In the 2016 interviews, the people were compliant, were aware, and had memory.
So did the
These are
alien come
women-
down and knock on their door and say, you want to go on a ship? Is that how they were
That's
picked?
not how it's done.
Yeah, they were attacked in their dream and say, okay, you're going to come on a ship. You know, programming is very easy to do. Hypnosis, you can hypnotize a person to do anything you want them to do. I did that half of my life to prove it to people. Now, you don't think these high races or whatever you want to call them could actually program a person to believe anything they see? Go back to Corey Good. He's one of the top speakers in the UFO world. He says
Take a
the
look
Blu-ray,
at the
Blu-ray shows him videos of the past, present, and future of his life. All right. Does he want to believe that?
Post-life, I got you. Yeah. How do they? That's exactly right. So if the pathology hasn't changed, it's
right.
It's not a. I mean, let's talk about the squation on bodies. That's happened in possessions. Incubus cases, fathers drive a mean and peel back the eyelids of a victim that found scarification. We would call those what? Scoop marks.
Right.
That was an incubus case, man. So these are the same entities. I
agree with that.
And they do lie. I think that to say, okay, you know what, they're all fine and good. Okay, fine, until we realize that. I mean, I can't imagine somebody being taken without their will or even volunteering. That's right. I mean, I know it happens sometimes, but still. That's...
But wait, you know, I heard many people when I used to lecture in the UFO world say they volunteered in their past life to be abducted in this lifetime. Why? Why would you want to do that? Hopefully you would want to move forward beyond that instead of come back to start all over.
Yeah, I have a case that I'm working on now. It's absolutely chilling. Oh my God. It's about a remote viewer, and it's actually his father. This is fascinating. His father was a very renowned remote viewer. His father would go into trances sitting down, turn all the lights off, instant trance. So-and-so's here and he wants to communicate. They're guides, right? They're all guides, and you know, that kind of illusion. His father, whenever he would leave his body, he said that there would be a gold cord that would tether his soul to his body.
That's a silver cord, right? That's true.
He would meet entities that lined up on the left and right side. And he said that whenever he would meet them, he had a word that he would give them, or they would give him, to let him know he's in the right place at the right time. Now, whenever he would possess his body again, they would carve religious amulets onto his chest. One night, he had a heart attack. When he got back in his body, he had a heart attack. He was petrified. He said that when he went and met these entities, he said they looked like his guides. They acted like his guides. He said, but there was a moment where he asked them the word and they didn't know it. And they realized that he realized,
right?
Oh my God. Essentially, again, they changed their apparition into something inhuman, terrified him. When he got back into his gyro. So it seems like it's a unified field, and that's, you know, I'm not trying to ramble, but it's very fascinating.
That's an incredible story. I really agree with it too.
Yeah.
Kelly Jo, have you run into anything like this?
Doing readings. I met like 3 people that were abducted, and one brought in a tube with it was like a it moved. In a vial, it was injected into them, and they had it removed by a doctor, and it was documented.
Stephen Lear, not Stephen, but Lear, he removes implants. He died last year, but he had hundreds of them. They actually filmed them removing one. Wow. When he analyzed it, was a plain piece of body. It was alive and just moving along. It was a tracking system, but obviously it got deactivated when it was taken out of the body. But I mean, those stories are real because I've been around all that. The girl that I have on my show, her boyfriend cut 2 implants out of her butt over the past couple of years. But the fact is, what can we do for mankind? I always look at, no matter what we're doing, what we're talking about, how can we help the human race with anything that we're talking about? Can we help them realize that we're going to be better people? I mean, we should be better people. You'd think in 30,000 years, we'd be a little more less killing and fighting and all those other words. And you think if any spiritual race was trying to help us, they could have helped us get a little more further down the road. And I feel bad about it because I look at people in the UFO world, all they're talking about is more outrageous stories. Well, the aliens took me here and they did this and we did that. I mean, John Lennon never wanted to admit he was abducted. My friend was his drummer. They played together a couple times. He got John Lennon's ranch. But he was abducted. He was given this crystal. He gave it to Uri Geller. Uri Geller carries it on his body, will never let go of it. John Lennon said to him in New York City, he said, I don't want to carry this. And he gave it to Uri Geller to keep. And Uri Geller said, I'm not going to have it analyzed. I trust what it is. It came from John. He wouldn't lie to me, and he never let anybody touch it. But see, like I said, people that are given gifts, there's a reason why. And John Lennon was just killed 2 weeks later after he gave away that. It could have been protection for him. It could have been a lot of different things, which John didn't understand or even care to know about. But at that time, we weren't talking about aliens either. We were talking about love. So yeah, it was a different frame in life.
What terrifies me about this is how, if we're going to interpret this phenomenon, we can't go to the future. We have to go to the past. My God, if they're writing Hebrew, I mean, they even wrote the name Yeshua on there. So if I don't, nobody can go to the future and say what it is. What is it? No, they're either ancient in belief system or in being. They have to be, because when you go back into the Emar manuscripts, back into Mesopotamia, the two most prominent entities were your midwife and your exorcist. And without fail, especially when you have a woman abductee, if there's a child involved, you're going to have a midwife ritual. Here's what you hold it, nurse it. So, and then I don't know, but that is a fascinating aspect.
Well, you do realize very few people could do exorcisms in the old days. No matter what they say, only a few people were able to do it. I mean, today there's only a few people really able to get a demon actually in a room with people where they can see it, chase it away. I mean, and saying in the name of Jesus Christ doesn't scare an alien away, that's for sure. And aliens are doing a lot of abduction as well right now. So even to determine which one's which for an average person, they have no clue. And whatever vision you're shown.
Unless we know what they believe in. And
right.
See, I approach, does it make sense? Like, I don't like, I know what I believe in, but that doesn't really matter because they're not coming to me because of what I believe in. They're after, they're after what they're after. And so what do they value? Like in demonology, whenever I do a lecture, I'll just say, a demon is not what it does. It's what it believes in. We can interpret what they do and understand what they believe in. You know what I mean? It's just like going into a crime scene as a criminal profiler. I can reverse engineer the psychology here. And that's why, I don't know.
I just wanted to bring this up real fast about the words when you brought up cloning.
Yeah.
The U.S. government cloned 6 super soldiers in New Jersey. They're 8 feet tall. They got blue eyes. They got super abilities, which nobody knows about. But they're very big. They had to get special trucks because I lived there. I lived right where it was. And they had to get these special trucks to take them out. Nobody knows where they went, what they're doing with them. But again, we're playing these games just as much as we can talk. I mean, it's near right now. But the technology, like Bill Myers' alien friends, the Pleiadians, they don't use the ships. I mean, when people talk about Myers was such a liar. And he had his foot I said, look, everything Billy Myers put up, 99% of it's fake. All the pictures he shot of ships in space, they're all fake. They were actually shot by NASA years ago before he even put them out there. So, I'm in UFO world half of my life as well. And I saw just about every kind of ship. I was next to ships. I was next to an alien, all those kind of things. But what I see, the people that I work with that lose their children, That's where I feel bad. Now, the girl that I'm doing this show with, she's losing her teeth, she's losing her hair, she's losing her nails. The doctors do not know why. I told her to go out and buy a Geiger counter. She's radioactive. At a certain level, it goes up and down. She went out to a crop circle. In England, 6 crop circles were formed last month. And she was inside one. And I said, was the radiation high? And she said, yeah. But she said there was no magnetic energy, which was bizarre. So, I mean, even that, nobody even understands the energy, how it's created and all that still today. Right. So there's just so many things that we have to really put together if we really want to get closer to the truth. And if it's going to help us, and how can it really help us? For me, I teach something. If you're not religious, spiritual, whatever word you want to use, if you don't believe in God, I can't help you. If you do, I will give you techniques how to get there. My first book was How to See God. My newest book is The True Teachings of Jesus from God Realization. Now, it's totally different. It's not what Christians believe. They don't know what Jesus was teaching. He was teaching something, obviously. Now, and it's not in the Bible. Why is that? I mean, I don't want to get into that part of it. That's where my life is right now. I mean, I was a witch when I was 16. I worked with one of the top medicine mediums, they were called at that time, in the United States, rated by the New York Psychic Center. And we used to go into it like 5 days a week. She used to channel different people, beings that were able to. And we asked all kinds of questions because I wanted to find out what they do there and all those kind of questions. People don't want to know that. People don't know, do you eat in heaven? Of course you don't. Do you want to? You can, yes. I mean, there's a lot of different things. Do people want to know those things? No, well, I'm just going to be with my family. It's such a limited aspect of what people accept right now as far as dying and all that. And I say, well, wouldn't you like to know what you're really going to do and how much further you can go if you become a little more aware of what's going to happen? I had 5 death experiences. I mean, to me, most people, when I listen to their experience, only touched on their experience. Because the first time you leave your body, the mind has to put it together and create something out of it. It saw white. Oh, that was my mother. Oh, it was Jesus, or it was God. That's all the mind can perceive. Soul can understand it, but the soul has to translate it to the mind so the mind can understand it. So I listened to these stories over and over. I mean, one after another, when I had mine, it grew and it becomes so much more important what happens when you go into these other realms and stuff. But getting back to history, the Egyptians thought they were going to reincarnate and use these bodies and all the things that the alien races were teaching them. But they were still sacrificing people.
They were. And they were self-mummifying.
Exactly.
That's what's fascinating, where they can literally just say, it's like Katamua said, I'm gonna die soon, create something in my image. I think, I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I can say, but I've really enjoyed this and I learned a lot.
Do you know anything about the rainbow body? The person, what was the other person? Did he leave? Is he still here? Buddhism talks about the rainbow body. David Wilcox is trying to teach how to become and use your rainbow body, which is delusional. And this is what happens. And this is so outrageous. In Buddhism, when a person goes into the rainbow body, it means they're dying and they're leaving their body. Their body shrinks to about 1.5 feet high. They wrap it up and they burn it. It leaves a crystal there when they're gone. And then the light leaves, and that's what's really the rainbow body. So when people say, I'm going to teach you how to become a rainbow body, Buddhists go to retreat for 3 years and they do all these things all their life to get to that point. Not like David Wilcox is going to teach people how to do it. I mean, we're taking words that are really important and like just trying to water them down. Like I say, I don't know if you use this word ever, ascension. People are going to go through ascension. The word is ascending, means you ascend from this level to the next. Ascension means you go through the pyramid into the astral plane through the psychic abilities, which Jesus did. Now, there's only a few people in history that ever went through ascension. And for people to use, well, I went through ascension, I'm going through ascension, is just like another mind game. And you could accept whatever you want. Like my new program, which I'm going to do, is Truth Beyond Your Truth. All right, because I don't want people coming on there and saying, this is my truth. I know what your truth is, but I want to give you mine if you're willing to listen. So yeah, there's a big step that I feel we all need to take. Yeah. The Republicans and Democrats, they're tearing each other apart. They're supposed to be helping people. Spending millions and millions of dollars on what? Putting somebody else down. What kind of country are we really?
Going back to the incubus and succubus, Nathan, how can a person rid themselves of those kinds of experiences?
The victimology specifically likes widows. I don't know why. To answer your question, if there's any male trauma in the woman's life, specifically, I mean, even in possession cases, 99% of a woman who, like, the entities that possess women are male. That's what's fascinating. So any voids in their life, any trauma, any hurt, it's the same thing with demonic attachments. But by the time they're an incubus, they've groomed the victim. It's not, because I've had cases where they've actually laid in between the husband and wife. Didn't touch the wife at all, but it just wanted the husband to know there's something in between. It's fascinating. It's crazy, man, how these entities, they think like humans. They think like serial killers in a way. But I would focus on spirituality, because I've never heard of an incubus case happening to somebody who believes in Yeshua.
Well, that's true. That's definitely true.
And there's a difference between Jesus and Yeshua. That's why it
Right. No, I know they use different words. That's true.
Right. So Yahweh in the flesh, Yahweh is my salvation, Yeshua. So these entities scared to death. Now, I'm not talking about, like, I've seen these entities like burn Bibles and melt fingertips of Virgin Mary and all this stuff. But when it comes to tallits, like when it comes to a prayer shawl, they do not touch it. It scares the living out of them. Now, that's just the data sample. I will say this. Guard yourself, guard your mind. Guard everything about you. If there's emptiness, voids in you, if there has ever been trauma, specifically, I'm using this for a woman because most of the time it's an incubus case. Very rare is it a succubus. And by the time it is a succubus, usually it's a dream, and the man just, whatever, he doesn't realize what the heck happened. But yeah, it'll groom the woman because most of the time the woman has had male trauma in the past. Maybe that she was beaten. Maybe a father wasn't there when he should have been. Maybe there has been an affair in the family. And so that entity is using that as an opening. And that's just what I've seen. So if that is the case, if I was a person who was experiencing an entity that was grooming me, and I've had cases where they'll whisper in the ear, they will not, and I've had cases where it's actually full-on rape.
Right.
But it's a very physical act. So the grooming aspect of it, shut it off. And if there is a problem with you and your husband, or anybody with their husband, and if it's salvageable, do your best to do that. And most of the time when the incubus is already there, something has already created that void. And that entity is just there to seal the deal. That's an awful way to say it. But
Oh, you're right.
So would you give the same advice to someone, to a man who's dealing with a succubus spirit?
no, get out of porn.
Oh, so it's pornography that opens the door.
It's porn and power. I mean, it's not just, it's not just someone going through puberty here. It's not just someone who goes to sleep and wakes up. An incubus is literally, and that happens, but this gets back to the aspect of what these dream weavers are. Yahweh in Ezekiel 13, he called them soul hunters. And that's what this whole thing is about in my mind. They would put people to sleep, or at least put them in a dream state, give them an illusion of something happening. Get what they want so that the person leaves the next day thinking, okay, it was just a dream of mine, or it was my wife. Me and my fiance, I was laying in bed one night, and in a dream, I had an old hag staring at me in my face.
You had the hag. Uh-oh.
I thought it was a dream, but there was a presence about it. I woke, man, I got chills. And as soon as I opened my eyes, it was there, staring at me in the flesh. I thought it was my fiance. No, it wasn't. So as a man, I have to guard myself in terms of if I was dealing with the succubus entity, guard myself with lust, guard myself with pornography. In these entities, it's just like they're serial killers, guys. They will, if especially a man who's not a ladies' man, a virgin, or someone who, and that goes back to the issue of the incubus cases and succubus cases. We have incubus, actually succubus, or no, I'm sorry, women who were pregnant but still had virginity. We had men who were fathers but were still virgins. Why? That's their victimology. So in early antiquity, we thought, as researchers in demonology, that number one, these entities took pleasure in them. They didn't take pleasure in this. This was a means to an end. I'll give you pleasure, but believe me, this is a partnership. I'm taking something. That's why in the Greek word, it's, I forget it now, but no, paralambano. When an unclean spirit departs from me, and that word depart, paralambano, I'm taking something to receive something. That's the incubus and succubus relationship.
Another thing I wanted to touch on real quick, astral projection. Is this dangerous?
No, because you leave your body when you sleep. You say your protection prayer and you're going and visiting and doing what you got to do spiritually.
Well, let me just throw a double side to that. In the Army, they have their whole trained Army group that are remote viewers. All right? It's very similar. They're not much different. I mean, you could draw a line. You could still use something like remote view or astral project to somewhere. But in the Army, they're projecting them to make them do things and see things. They had to stop it because what happened was remote viewers decided to remote view the people that were making them do it. And they saw what they were going to do with what they were doing. And they realized it was so evil. I mean, if you could remote view a bank, go inside, see the combination, go in there and rob the bank. I mean, you can do a lot of things with that. You can go inside a room and watch somebody. I mean, I had somebody tell me when I was explaining astral projection to him, he said, I had this experience. Tell me if it's real. And he went through a whole astral projection experience. And he proved it to himself that it was real. So, I mean, it's real, and it can be, anything could be used bad. I was 16 to about 20 when I was a witch. I call myself a witch. I don't like to use witch, warlock, but I wasn't reading books. I wasn't following anybody. I was learning about 32 psychic abilities. I learned 30 of them. 2 of them, the 2 that I wanted, I couldn't do. It's always like that. But in the interim, I was empathic for almost 2 years. That was one of the worst times of my life, being able to see other people's real thoughts and what they're thinking. And the only way I wanted to make sure, every day, I would always challenge one person that I actually heard them say whatever they were saying and say it to their face. And they would go crazy. So, I mean, I wanted to make sure I wasn't making every thought up and everything I feel up, and but I begged Spirit to take it away, and I finally got it taken away. But I said, it's hard when you walk the street, you're not seeing people talking about spiritual matters, or I love God, I love spirit. I wanted to, you don't hear that. When you go inside somebody that knows somebody, doesn't know somebody's listening, the conversation gets pretty bizarre. And it was just one of the things that I didn't want anymore. I mean, they call it, there's a big ship special on it right now, teaching people how to do it and everything else. I said, invading people's space is not a good thing. I mean, if they ask you what's going on in my body, maybe going in their body to see what's wrong is a different thing, but not the way we're doing it now. We abuse everything. I mean, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing. You said you help people, you help the police. I mean, all those things are important right now because the police will never get to that point without using people like you inside it and accepting it. But we do have a psychiatrist and shrink that say, you can't say ghost, you can't say spirits, you can't say God, you can't say those words. I mean, we need to shift that to accept it. I mean, of course, it's just as real as, well, I don't know, I'm just angry, or I'm whatever excuse you want to use, because people do get possessed and all those kind of words. And dealing with it is so hard now, not for me, because, like when we're talking about what you need for protection, it depends what your highest source is, because a lot of priests, I mean, The Exorcist, the original movie, was based on a real story. 2 priests died it was a boy, trying to get the spirit out of this one boy. So, because you can't just use a Bible as a weapon.
No.
What's inside you, where your connection to spirit is. is your protection.
Yep.
And more people need to learn about protection when they deal with all these kind of things. Like you said, you have a word and you know what that word means to you, and it protects you, and it definitely scares demons away. I mean, it's not complicated. One of my best friends is one of the top exorcists in the United States. He does about 300 a year, and I have him on my show a lot. We agree on a lot of things, but he says a lot of it is mental. It's not real, but they believe it's real. And you can believe something's real, and it makes it real to you. I mean, that's one of the bottom lines with life. You accept something, it's real. We all accept religions of path and everything else, but how real is it? Doesn't really matter if we truly believe it.
Nathan,
You know
what's your thought on astral projection?
I've done it without knowing it. I think that my gift becomes a curse when I use it outside the context for which it was given. I had a case, was a murder case, where I was sitting at a restaurant reading, and someone said, okay, listen, I didn't even know about the murder, but can you come cleanse my house? Because, my wife was killed and we're experiencing paranormal activity. I don't know how it happened. I left my body. I was walking upstairs, walking up to a closet. I met an entity upstairs. I knew what was in a closet. I don't know how that happened. I know that I saw what wanted to be seen and what needed to be seen. There are things that I can look at that don't need to be seen. And when I'm outside of that dimension of authority, I don't become a victim. I'm now a volunteer. They will snatch you. They will snatch you. In Ezekiel 13, these soul hunters would put people to sleep so that their ba'ah would fly, that concept of the bird soul. Yahweh said that you take the lives of men to make their souls fly. What they would do is they would intentionally put people in that sleep state so they could astrally project. And then once they astrally project, captured their souls, cut a piece of their flesh off, sew it onto their own bodies. They're necromancers. So it's a terrifying aspect to it, because I don't think people, especially, people, oh my God, it's bunny rabbits and gumballs, until they snatch your body. So they take something from you. You can't save yourself. It's a weird phenomenon. But I think that for me personally, I don't do it. I've done it. But now, presently, I don't do it because I know that if I'm using my gift outside of the context in which it was given to me personally, then it's almost as if you see them without authority. And at that moment, they see you too. And I don't have any blood to put on those kinds of doorposts.
Right. So for a person who is studying this and wants to do it just to try and see if it works, do you recommend abstaining from something like that?
Unless you have someone who knows how to do it. Like, let me say this, man. My agent she's a former Orthodox Jew. And I think that's probably why she's my agent, because a lot of my work is in Judaism and stuff. But yeah, honestly. Anyway, she tells me all the time that astral projection is what a lot of the Kabbalistic scholars used to do. We just called it astral projection. It was just them closing their eyes and their soul leaving their body. And we have cases in the Bible where that's happened, but it's always happened when it was needed. It wasn't just, I'm going to go look at something. It's like Nietzsche said, you look enough into the darkness, it'll look right back at you. And I think that's what happened with my individual I discussed earlier, is that his father was, oh, hi, what's up, dude? How you doing, bro? Until it wasn't what's up. And it wasn't how you doing, bro, until it was, you shouldn't be here. And they knew it. And you're outside of the authority of someone or something. And the man, when he got back into his body, they carved Egyptian hieroglyphs. Sorry, David Jacobs, figure that one out. We got to go back in time, right? They're writing in Egyptian hieroglyphs. So either they're in, so what did they do? They victimized that individual. He shouldn't have been there. They knew it. So when his body got back in, or when his soul got back into his body, they carved hieroglyphs on his chest. They have it on film. Take that, that's essentially what they're saying. Why? The man had a heart attack, almost died. From that point on, his gift was never used in the same way. it was always for money, because something in him had been soiled. It had been it became flies in the ointment. But me personally, I can say this: there was no way I could have gotten rid of that entity in that house if I had not done what I'd done. So I know it's useful in context, at least in my own, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I cleanse houses too, and I say my protection prayer, and I always have a
It's the
friend.
real deal, ain't it?
And yeah, sometimes it can get intense.
Oh
You
yeah.
have to seal the portals and the vortexes and all
We
that.
saw we saw the darkness in the room. Literally, it was like this.
Ew, yeah, it was
It was
Rosinette.
nuts. There was an atheist there that was bawling his eyes out. It was the most moving experience of my life. He said, I'm a raised atheist. He said, my parents don't believe in God. I don't believe in spirits or nothing. He said it changed his life. And the next 3 months later, he had called every pastor in Dayton, Ohio, telling them his experience. Then he called me. This is nuts, man. You know, sometimes it's good to hear good news, man. So then he called me and said, listen, I want to do what you do now.
Well, that's an honor. But no, he don't want to do it.
No, he doesn't, right?
I
was like, wow,
No.
it can only take an experience like that to change somebody who doesn't believe in anything like that.
Right.
The complete turnaround. So,
I'm a medium. I can talk to dead people. And I had an atheist come through his daughter came in and he goes, this is cool as, can I say shit? Cool as shit. He goes, it's more colorful, more brilliant. He goes, it's awesome. He goes, I thought when you were dead, didn't bury. And he goes, it's fantastic.
That's cool.
So that was so cool that, he came through like that. And she knew it was her dad because he didn't believe in anything. Dead, buried, blackness, never mind.
Right.
So that was such an honor to have him come through. So I'm acknowledging your feller.
It was fascinating. The actual murderer was the victim's father.
Wow.
Yeah. He when he was embodied, he would get high and drunk and beat her unconscious. And he told her, I'll kill you, I'll kill you, I'll kill you. So that's why, man, when I first got into this field, I came from what's called the Pentecostal denomination.
Uh-huh.
And, and it's not like a lot of people say, okay, your exorcists are all fake. It's like, okay, look, there's people out there that pay for, charge people and throw some stuff at screens. And then there are people that I knew who would go away and fast for 2 or a month or something, and they would come back and they wouldn't even do anything. They wouldn't do anything. They would just look at him and say, go. And you would see people it was, there was only a handful of men in my lifetime that I knew that were just unbelievably gifted. Like there were people that would walk up to him and say, I'm trying to cast this devil out. And they would say, okay, cool. And they would say, listen, my name's Jonathan Suber. And they would be like, oh God. I mean, instantaneously speak French because, he's a white dude that was raised in Africa. So he knew French.
Yeah.
It was just, it's crazy stuff, man, but it's fascinating.
Well, how does one become a demonologist?
It has to be a calling. It cannot be a curiosity. One becomes a demonologist because there's a particular darkness in them that understands the darkness without. It thinks like them. Your exorcists didn't become exorcists because they knew how to burn fumigants. They became exorcists because they could smell the air when there was nothing in it and say there's an entity here. Be it cancer, especially cancer, it smells like death.
Yeah, rotten flesh.
Exactly right. So the way I don't know, I could say this. Everybody has their own pilgrimage, but the way I became a demonologist was that I experienced a malevolent haunting in my house. I saw shadow people. I had a shadow person staring at me from the outside of my room. Smoky apparition would flow in. Had the same nightmare of a person committing suicide. Well, always black and white. I mean, that's how I became a demonologist. It's in my blood. I live and exist for displacing the darkness. It's not a curiosity. They will kill curiosity.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I don't want to be baying darkness molded me. You know what I mean? No, but you know what I mean? But I don't know. That's how I became a demonologist. But you have to know your stuff. It can't be I throw holy water and I dip, chuck up the deuces.
That don't work.
Right. You could do more damage than good. So you have to know the literature. You have to have a favorite demonologist. I have people that I don't even know. I'm a demonologist. Okay, who's your hero? I don't have a hero. Okay, you ever read a book on it? No, I don't need to. I got some holy water. Okay, let's see what they do with you. They'll pluck you like a feather, put it in their hat, and you'll never be the same. You'll lose your house, your family. People don't realize that these entities are the ones that kicked the chair out from Malachi Martin. You understand? He hit his head, the temple of his head on the corner of a table. A shadow figure kicked the chair out. So these entities,
they're gnarly.
Do what?
Pretty powerful nowadays. I think people give them more power as well, because over the years, I mean, I just want to start something. George Washington was a remote viewer, and there's a picture in the Jumel Mansion what he had painted. When he was facing the army, he was out of his body looking down where the army was on the other side, and that's how he won. But I mean, people probably didn't know what it was called or give it credit for what it was. They just did it. And for me, I never took classes, never studied with people, but it was like angels always showed me things. I worked with a deity for 6 years straight. I didn't know who it was, and I was 6 years old, and she worked with me till I was 12. I didn't find out who it was until I was 25. So, I mean, there's things we do not really aware, because you can't talk to your mother, you can't talk to your father. Who do you talk to? How many people are like right on with those kind of information for the children? Mm-hmm. Never mind, I can go into lots of stories too, but, you know, again, we have to realize there's things we can do to make ourselves better and protect ourselves. And protection, which we were talking about, is building the protection inside yourself.
Yes.
Those blind spots and those dark spots. I always call the one thing that people have to face is the dark night of soul. And if they don't ever do that, they don't overcome that darkness that's within them. And it's usually, they call it the dragon within, they call it a lot of things, but I call it the dark night of soul. I mean, but we all have it or had it, and we need to go beyond it. Hopefully we do. Some people don't want to. I mean, I look at people drinking, smoking, wild sex and all those things, and I said, well, they're happy with that. They don't want to go. And I hate to say the Muslims, but they look to go to heaven to be with virgins, have sex for a week straight. What kind of goal is that to have? I mean,
oh man, that breaks Solomon's record. My God.
Well, Tommy, what is a remote viewer?
Right, remote viewer is you black out your mind, and then you focus on, you could do it a lot of different ways. Put coordinates in, or look at a map, and then just put a pin in that spot and then focus on that spot, and then you go there. There's different ways to do it, but you have to find out everybody has their own way of doing something, and you need to learn what your way is. But you always start with a principle. Focus on a spot where you want to go. Put pictures in an envelope and have somebody do that and seal them up. I was always able to read what any picture person put in an envelope. I didn't even know how to do it, wasn't taught how to do it. But see, there is a place where you are gifted and you're not. I mean, I wanted to be a singer. I can't sing. You could want to be a lot of things, but the gift to be a psychic is an incredible gift, I think. To be a medium is an incredible gift. I mean, it's a problem at a lot of times, but it's a gift. And if you help other people, you're using it wisely. I mean, it's when people use certain gifts, like if you're a remote viewer, see when the house is empty and I can go inside and rob it and things like that, it can become very evil. Right. So yeah, it's the mentality of the human race. I don't think we have morals anymore. The morals that society has is shrinking every single day. I mean, we should be aware of like all these things around us. Half of the people don't even know any of this exists. Or you tell them, oh, that's make-believe, that's fairyland. I said, no, it's much more real than this world is, because they're playing with this world a lot more than we are playing with it. So it's just waking up to that. But remote viewing is a gift, but I call what I do soul travel. Your soul leaves and it goes to higher levels. Your astral body's remote viewing or astral travel. But soul body means you could go to the highest level, which is the soul plane, where soul dwells when it finally leaves all these lower bodies and stays there. but soul can always move forward from there and let go of the soul body. But I mean, you can't talk to people about that. They have to go to the astral plane. And like you said, it's beautiful. It's incredible. When this little kid says, oh, there's colors. I always say there's 4 primary colors here. There's 32 primary colors on the astral plane. So the color is immaculate. You can't compare it. I mean, when the computer says, well, we got 2,000 colors now. Imagine multiplying that by 32 each color. And we got trillions of colors. So it gets better if you get away from this world. As long as you play in this world, you play with the games aliens are playing with, Satan's playing with, and all these things are playing with. I don't think any one of them really has an ultimate goal. I mean, Satan doesn't want to lose his people. I mean, that's a simple one, but like why a demon would come in your house and interfere with your life because they feel like it. All these little things are so critical to us right now. And we need, I mean, I don't know how many people are listening to this show, but I'm sure if anybody listens to this, they might hear one little thing that might open something up inside them and say, wow, at least that little wow moment, oh, it could be real. The experience, then suddenly they'll look at an experience they had and said, oh, that was real. I really did leave my body. Oh, we can leave. I mean, those things become aware when somebody helps you realize that it's an ability. And we can do that. And I do, I mean, we all do it in our own way, the best we can. And that's all we can do right now. But I feel each one of us is really beneficial to this world right now. And what we do, no matter who we work with, even if it's what our level's at, it's helping them get to a higher level than where they're at. I mean, you go into a baseball field and talk to the baseball, football players, whatever. Do you know anything about spirits? No. Do you know anything about death? No. Do they care? No, I got to practice. So we're limited. I mean, government makes sure that we don't have a chance to focus. I think that's why they're taking God out of everything, so people don't even relate to that aspect anymore.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of changing going on because they don't want us to be that. I mean, the New World Order, which is the UN Agenda 21, which people need to know what's going to happen to the world in the next 4 years. I mean, people need to understand what rich people decided that they want to do to this planet. And who controls those rich people? It's not just their ego. I mean, ego's part of it, but something's controlling their ego. So there's all these little steps that people don't want to hear it. And I say my show is truth only. And I don't bring people that I don't trust on my show. I don't want to promote somebody that's lying on my show. I want to deal with the facts ultimate because people need to hear that. If they don't want to hear it, they don't need to listen to my show. I mean, most people don't want the truth. I have a religion. I don't need anything else. Good. You got a religion. Live your life. When you're on your dying bed, does it help you? When you do die and you cross over, what do you got? What do you think of? What do you think you're going to be experiencing? I mean, you only got 125 years here. That's not a long time. And after you hit 60, it just goes faster and faster. So you get closer to leaving this planet than staying here. I mean, even Buddha said, think of death every minute, because every second you're getting closer to it. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at life. But, I mean, love isn't the answer for everything. It could be, but it isn't. And is peace the answer? It could be, but it isn't. So until we face each other, like how many people are aliens? Now everybody wants to be a walk-in. Everybody wants to be whatever. I said, you know, how about being who you are and trying to do something good for the world? I mean, that's simple. I'm not saying I'm a walk-in from the Pleiades and I'm this kind of race or I'm that kind of race. Is it helping you really? I mean, their ego is boosted. All the people I know in the UFO world, and I know most of them, but I can tell you this, the most important people that I know were killed. And one of them's in jail. One's in a nut house and one's in jail. And when truth comes out, they don't want people to hear it.
Right, but they do want a profit, and that's what's fascinating.
Oh, no, people want that more than anything.
Right. It's literally a profit. You know, oh my God, this is what happened. It's a Christmas miracle. And I'm not downplaying it. I'm simply saying that if Edward Kelly and John Dee showed anything to us, they can have an apparition of a beautiful woman who wants to give you an Enochic language, and then just swap wives for a second. That's all I want you to do. And then as soon as they do it, they go back, and the apparition's a decrepit old woman laughing. Right? Again, this game is a very serious game, and Yahweh calls them soul hunters. I can't get away from that. And he said that one day, he said, I will come to you and I will lift up your skirt. Why? It's a reference to pregnancy, because these aren't your babies. And these abductees, they're having babies. You know what I mean? It's all in my mind, it fits so, it's almost tailored. But that's why, you know, it's not just, okay, listen, it's high five, I got a miracle. These entities are looking for people to propagate a false gospel. Tell people, you know, that's why in Ezekiel 13, you call them false prophets, dream diviners. Not that they're Josephs in the Bible, but someone who can put you in a dream state and then tell you what to remember about it.
Mm.
And then he said, you slip into the windows at nighttime. See, in Mesopotamia, we would call that Lamishtu. And Lamishtu had a feverish fancy for babies.
I got a question for you. With all your knowledge and what you deal with, do you believe in end times coming anytime soon?
I don't know. Eschatology, I think that's a good question. That's a whole nother show, man. But
I know. I just, because, you know, when I think of Revelations, I mean, when I was young, I was going to become a preacher. I was going to church 6 days a week, 4 hours a night. I was going to sign the paper to become a preacher. And then it says you got to give 40% of your check. I said, I'll give as much money as I can when I can, period. There's no set number. And I walked away. I said, God didn't say 40%. I mean, I'll give 80% when I can. Mm-hmm. So, but to write your name on a piece of paper with a number, I said, God came up with 40. I mean, in my religions, use 40% of your money supposed to go back to the church and things. But, you know, it's
bad, man. I thought mine was bad. 40.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard of the tithe, but nothing like 40.
40%. No.
I was a born again Christian, and I was going to become a preacher.
Oh, man, that's a tough. I was a preacher for about 15 years. It's not, you know, I saw a lot and saw some stuff that just I don't know.
Oh, I walked away from it all. I mean, when I was 14, when I was baptized, I went to my minister, and I was allowed to ask him 3 questions. I said, well, what's God look like? Well, nobody knows that. I said, what's heaven look like? Well, nobody knows that. I said, well, what do you do in heaven? Well, nobody knows that. I said, you know nothing. So why would I want to follow this religion? And I walked away from it at 14. So we have to develop ourselves the best we can. But I mean, I had nobody. I never had anybody helping me, guiding me along my way. And I don't know about you. You might have had somebody, which was a cool thing. Especially when you're trying to get to a spiritual place. Who can help you? I mean, I love my grandmother, but she just made me go to church, and that wasn't the answer.
Right.
I mean, the little things that we go through to try to take a next step. But I was gifted in a lot of ways that I wouldn't want to be gifted, but I realized it took me to where I needed to be. And I always wanted to be married, have the perfect family. 3 of my wives gave themselves an abortion. So yeah, it was hard in my life.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But for me, I realized I would have never followed a spiritual path if I would have stayed involved with the family affair. I mean, I would have been happy. I would have lived in bliss this whole life. But that's what it would have been. I would have never saw my past lives. I would have never been aware of a lot more of everything that I am right now. So yeah, spirit, when you're on a path and you decide to walk it, spirit will work with you to make sure you do walk it. If you truly are in the space to walk it. I mean, I want to be Superman. I want to be the most psychic power person on the planet. I mean, when you come up with that, it's different. But you're given this gift, suddenly you see this vision. Oh, wow, that was so cool. And then you see it happen. Wow. When it confirms what you see and go through, it makes it real. And that's all that really matters, as long as it's real to you. But it's important. I mean, just saying, well, they're taking our blood, they're taking us and having sex with us, they're populating their planet. So what? What's that have to do with God, spirit, death, and everything else? Nothing. It's their world. That's not my world. So when we face our world, which we do on a daily basis, it's hard because this world's pretty wild. I mean, I do call this, after watching The Matrix, this is the Matrix. You can go in any part of it and get stuck in there and do whatever you want and believe it's reality. But there is always a way, and I just tell souls or people, there's always a way to get out of it. Even the silver cord, and I'll tell you this, you can cut it. And very few souls. I had a medicine woman I studied with 26 years. She said, you can't cut that or you'll die. I said, if you don't cut it, you'll never get into the higher worlds because it stops you from going past the astral plane. That's what it's for. I mean, there's a lot of things that I learned the hard way, but I don't listen to nobody. And I guess that's where you become real. You call the black sheep, you call a lot of things, but that's when you face your truth, who you are, and nobody can take it away. And I mean, I live in that now, and I know people hate me. Well, you this, you don't, and I tell people what to do. I'm not telling them. I'm just putting the truth there. You can listen or not. That's a choice. You don't want to listen, just turn your channel, shut it off. But if you want to hear it, listen. You know, you got nothing to lose except maybe you might hear something you like. And what you're talking about, it's incredible. I would, like I said, when I was working as a witch and worked with the top medium, learning, I always challenged everything she channeled when we had spirits there. And she channeled Ludwig Beethoven. She'd sit in front of the piano and play every song he could play without music or anything. I mean, I said, wow. But when it came to people, we would check history. Now, even the Rolling Stones, the one stone that was killed in his swimming pool, he came to us and said, they drowned me. 2 people drowned him. And that only came out a couple years ago, but they never got into it any more than that. But there's little things when you play, I play with a Ouija board when I was 6 years old. Everybody says, oh, that's bringing demons in. Where your attention is what you're going to bring to you. It's the bottom line. You go in there without any protection, without awareness. Yeah, anything will jump in there. If here's a space to come into, I'll come in there. We'll take over. Like you said, we'll do whatever we want with you. Sure, we will. But I was always protected. I mean, I had a Tibetan teacher that was trying to help me break my protection. I have a gold ball around me. Wherever I travel in the inner worlds, nothing can penetrate it. He gave me a Tibetan word to try to smash the shield around me. I said it over and over. He said, say it louder. It didn't do nothing to my shield. And then I went higher into the higher worlds, which he couldn't go. So, I mean, when you're working with lower levels, you have to realize where you are, because they'll pull you down to their level rather than trying to come up to yours. Always. They can't, so they'll bring you down. So, but if you always stay who you are, aware of what you are, and like you said, protection inside, there has to be something there. What you give yourself to or follow or feel that your source of energy, your source of life, and all those things come from, it's important to have something there. I mean, other than, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in nothing. Well, you're an open target for anything.
Absolutely.